I was seeing like girls who looked like me, and I was like, oh my God, like, could I do this? Could this be a thing? And at the time we were trying to move into our first apartment. So I was like, let me give it a go. So I got online and I was getting all these compliments and people were tipping me. And I was like, you know what? I think I actually like this.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it.
I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I'm Melrose Michaels, and you can find me at Melrose Michaels on social and melrosemichaels.com.
Just a reminder, if you are enjoying the podcast on Apple, please leave us a 5-star rating and review because it really helps us to grow as a podcast and better share information from our guests to the sex work community as a whole.
Last but not least, if you want to support the podcast, please go to anchor.fm/Horizon, spelled WHORIZON, to become a premium subscriber of On the Horizon, which unlocks 2 bonus episodes on the 8th and 22nd of each month with tons of extra exclusive footage from ourselves and our guests.
Who misses free and affordable ads without the anti-sex work rhetoric? Assembly 4 is a team of sex workers and technologists from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising to the sex work community. They also give back to organizations based in harm reduction, sex work, and education. Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their platform, Tris.link, is a refreshing and well-needed change in both presentation and mission. It is free to join and open to all. In the words of an A4 user, from the policies to the language to the advice and tips, it makes such a big difference to feel encouraged and supported instead of policed. Welcome back to another episode of On the Horizon.
Welcome.
We are talking about the gig economy today.
I love this topic.
I know, because we are both like hustlers.
Yes, giggers.
Giggers. I've only had 4 years of my life, like 4.5 years of my life where I had like one full-time job. I was a high school teacher for 2 years in my late 20s. And then in my late 30s, I worked a corporate job for 2.5 years, mostly when I was pregnant with my son. I wanted the maternity benefits and everything. And other than that, I have been working like 3 and 4 part-time jobs and at a time, like almost my whole career. Like,
I've never framed it that way, to think about like, how long did I really work in corporate or like mainstream civ job? Like when I was 16, I got hired when I was 16. If you don't count like modeling pre-16, like when you're allowed to work, like those aren't real work hours to me personally. Other child people who are hired, yes, but not me. So, but from 16, I was waitressing and I was working at a pizza place simultaneously. And then after that, I worked at a bank, but I only did those jobs from 16 to 20. So really it's only 4 years for me too.
Yeah. And I'm 44 now. And so like I've spent like 22 years, like, and a lot of them are like not sex work related jobs, but they're like,
Still
I'm
gig.
like, adjuncting a class here, doing something over here. I did corporate relocations for a while. Like
still freelance.
Yeah, I've done English training. I've done ghostwriting. I've done freelance writing, like all kinds of things that are like little jobs that I'm like stringing together.
Yeah.
And part of the appeal to that, because every once in a while I'm like, man, this is rough. I should just get like a job. And then I'm like, but I don't want a job.
No.
I can't live or work like that. And I think part of the appeal for me has been that I'm a mom and need to be available for my kids. And part of it is just how my brain functions.
Yeah. I have that, like, I don't have kids and I don't have to work around certain things that a lot of giggers do have to work around, or freelancers, they have disabilities or other things at play in their circumstances that make a regular 9-to-5 not sustainable. And that was not my experience, but I don't think I could ever have done something else. Like even when I was working my mainstream gigs, I always felt like, this is going to sound so shitty, but it's true. Whatever. I'm a bad person inside. I don't know. But I always felt like I could be doing this. I could do the thing you're doing better, or there's a better way to approach this, or like my brain works that way where I'm like, I'm putting a process in place or a system in place. And that's like the entrepreneur DNA, I think, kind of in as a factor. So for me, it was just like, I could do this myself in a different way and it'd be faster or more effective or more productive or whatever.
Yeah. You have kind of like an engineering brain. I think I think I have like kind of a artist creative brain where I'm like, I don't want to do something that doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like in time, which actually is kind of what you're saying too, but like in the process. But like
mine work in like, I have to switch it. Like they can't be simultaneous. I'm either in an inspired creative space or I'm in a productive machine.
Yeah. And
space.
my problem with having like jobby jobs was that like, a lot of it didn't make sense to me. And I would be like, why do I have to follow these stupid rules? Like, I don't want to do this. This seems like a waste of time.
I think that's what I was trying to articulate as well, but it came out really bad.
No, it didn't. But I think that there's a lot of like red tape to jobs that I'm just like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this? You know, it was funny because at my corporate job, PJ and I were walking down the street yesterday and we saw a big like Iron Mountain truck because they store like documents like in the mountains under like, to preserve them. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. I remember like preparing all these documents to go into these like mountains, like side of mountains to be stored. And PJ was like, in 2022, is it really necessary to put pieces of paper in mountains?
In safe places? Yeah.
Like does that really make sense? And I was like, no, it's a huge waste of time. Like why they paid me a full-time salary to put pieces of paper in files? Like, oh, I can't tell you.
That's so true.
But it's so like, but there's just like things that like they get used to doing it a certain way. So they're going to do that. And then there's all these like interests in people who like store things in sides of mountains and stuff. So like things get perpetuated that it's hard for me to connect with. And I've just always found that like doing what I want to do on my schedule has been better for me.
Yeah, and more fulfilling. And I think that's what our guests really speak to a lot as well. We have Steph Sia, who's actually been on the podcast, but not in like a guest capacity. Yeah. She kind of just came on to share her day in the life
her day was so crazy that we're like, you have to come back for gigs.
And we're glad that she came for this episode because when we talk gig economy, you can't not think and talk about Steph Sia and all the hats that she wears and somehow manages to do really well. And then our other guest, Shy Spells, is phenomenal. Also, she has Floral Jellies, which is her jam company.
On Etsy. She sells jam on Etsy. She's been a camera, a phone sex operator, and she juggles a marriage and a vanilla job with all of that too. Yeah, so the hats are worn all over, and it was really interesting to hear the different perspectives and topics that rose to the top of that discussion. Because although it's all in the space of gig economy, there was different arenas that we got to speak to. And it was just really, it's a great episode. I think everyone listening is going to, if you're an entrepreneur or a hustler, or you've got a side gig, like something here is going to benefit you. So just stay tuned and put your listening ears on because you're going to be blown away. You sound like a kindergarten teacher. Put your ears on.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, hanging out with my kids.
Yeah. But you can't leave this episode without having something taken away. So without further ado, let's jump into it. This segment of today's episode is sponsored by Sex.com, one of the absolute best content creator platforms out there. It looks better than any other, has a higher level of security than any other, and boasts over 3 million unique visitors a day scrolling through viral looped adult short form videos. Sex.com is like, well, sex itself. A lot of people do it. Some just do it much, much better than the others. Sex.com. If you're going to do it right.
Steph Sia is a stripper, content creator, and pole dance instructor based in Vancouver, Canada. She is the host of the sex work podcast, Stripped by Sia, that shares the stories of the lived experiences of sex workers with the aim to destigmatize the sex industry. She also enjoys a good bowl of noodles.
Welcome, Steph Sia, to the podcast. Thanks for joining us in an official episode this time.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Can you tell our audience a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Well, I am Steph Sia. That is my name. I'm also a dancer on stage. I also go with it by the name Kimchi, which is my stage name, which is super fun. I'm also a digital content creator. I'm a YouTuber. I also work in some kind of vanilla work as well. So I'm also a marketing consultant and learning currently to be an executive director of a nonprofit organization, which is like kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I write, and I'm also a pole dance instructor. And I think that's it for now.
Noodles podcast?
Yeah, Noodles. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I run a YouTube channel on Noodles, which is like completely PG and not like nudes, but I also do that too with my OnlyFans. And I also have a podcast called Strip by Sia, which I do every single week for the past 2.5 years.
So like,
you're busy.
What? That doesn't make sense to me. What you just said.
You're in the world. You're like the Elon Musk of sex work and mainstream. Like you do all things.
Like, how does that work out? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Oh yeah, I forgot. I also work really part-time at a hotel as well. So
okay, yeah. Right.
Of course you do.
I know it's a lot. It's like scary. People get really overwhelmed for me, and they're like, "Are you okay?"
And like, I was just in Vancouver recently, and we had lunch, and like, I don't know how you fit lunch into that schedule. But it was lovely. So thanks for lunch.
That was the best like 2 hours ever. For me, it really comes down to time management and just prioritization. So that is super, super key because some things are kind of consistent. Like my work at the hotel is kind of consistent, so I can kind of build it upon that. I have specific days and times that I like to record my podcast, as well as certain times and hours, which I work with my clients with my marketing business. And then also when I'm editing my YouTube channel or I'm editing stuff for my podcast. So I kind of like switch and like kind of slot things into specific time blocks, and like just depends on like the day. Like, oh, if it's like a Friday or Saturday, okay, I gotta get that podcast episode done. Or like if it's like I do my YouTube videos on Mondays, usually, also Saturdays, sometimes Wednesdays and Fridays, depending on the content. So it just really, really depends. But there is a method to the madness, if I may say.
Is there like because like for me, like I built, this is total nerd moment. Okay. But I went into like mindmap.com, Mindmeister, whatever it's called. And I did like a mind map of like my perfect business structure for my content and my media. Like when I take this video, then the next person takes it, turns it into GIFs, clips, whatever, pulls the audio, makes a quote, makes that a graphic for social media, like what my dream media team would look like and like what that process would be. Do you have any processes in place for things like that? Because with so much going on, it seems like there needs to be a system, you know?
I wish I had something like that because that sounds so cool.
In theory, it doesn't exist, but in theory.
That would be amazing because I need that. I would really say, like, I kind of look at it like at a month glance because I can kind of see, like, for instance, we're hopping, and at the time of recording, we are hopping into May, which is pretty soon. And I already kind of know that May is going to be absolutely bonkers. I'm booked for 3 weeks out of like the 4 weeks in May that, like, in terms of like the club, my work at the club. So I'm kind of like trying to dedicate, okay, I'm going to need like more sleep on those days. I need to get like work started earlier, or I have to really, really bang it out. There is a process to all of it. And I really try to stay focused between the hours of, I wake up at 5:30 until, for sure, like computer work. I would say I'm active to anywhere between 1 p.m. and anywhere between 5 and 9 p.m., just depending on the amount of workload, or if I'm like having a video come out or whatnot, or I need to post something on my Patreon. It just really, really depends on like that. But once I can kind of map it out by month, and I can see in my calendar, and my calendar fills up really, really quickly. So those time slots kind of go fast, and I really rely on my Google Calendar. It's like I was doing without it for so long until last year, which I like literally couldn't keep track of everything in my head anymore. So that really helps. And also not only looking at things at a glance on a monthly basis, but also on a weekly basis and even a daily basis. So I like to have like daily checklists of things I really need to get done today. And then I would have and set deadlines for specific projects or specific clients. So that's kind of how I kind of divvy it up as much as I can. It still sounds crazy to me. So
it sounds crazy to all of us. Actually. No, I find you very inspiring. There's not a lot of people I find inspiring in terms of work ethic. Like, because I consider myself like a hardcore hustler, but you are one I do think about often. Because I'm like, when I'm feeling lazy or like I'm sucked down the Netflix rabbit hole, I'm like, Steph Sia is working. Like it occurs to me, like I'm being outworked by someone, and I'm like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta do that. I want to ask too, just on a personal note, because I experienced this really. Jessie knows I had like a hardcore mental breakdown recently of burnout. How do you deal with burnout?
Yeah, burnout is such a real thing. And luckily, it hasn't happened too much. I think it's definitely happened possibly one time this year. And that was about a month ago when I was kind of gearing up for my first like convention and like networking event. And like I was going on vacation. I had a bunch of stuff that I had to finish. But I am doing a much better job now dealing with burnout and knowing when I need to actually take a step back. And I know when I'm starting to burn out, when I am feeling exhausted all the time, like physically and mentally, like I don't want to think about anything anymore. I don't want to do anything. I start going into a depressive state. So some signs for me is that nothing really gives me joy during that time. It's just like I'm zombieing along. Yeah. Or like I am feeling miserable in terms of like, I need to do this, I need to do that, but there's just not enough time in the day. But when that starts to happen, then I'm like, okay, I need to actually get some time to like sit down and relax, not in front of my laptop. But I need to like sit on the couch and like veg.
Yeah.
Veg for a bit.
That's a good point to like really know and have that self-awareness of like, okay, these feelings and these are signs that I'm getting close to a breaking point. Because I think I was pretty unaware of that.
Sometimes I need a Netflix rabbit hole to fall into because like which means like not checking Twitter simultaneously and stuff, like just chilling.
There's a difference when you're like, because I'll do that like a nightly basis, like laptop in front of Netflix, and I'm like still actively working and editing or doing graphics or whatever. But there's a very big difference, and it's usually after I travel, where I'm like, I'm down for a day. Don't bother me. Don't come over. Like I don't exist. I'm here.
I think travel is like, because I was thinking about, because I travel for work, but then like and conventions and things like that, and when I come back, I'm like spent. Yeah. Do you like take some time out after doing big events like that?
Yeah, I kind of have to. Like, I kind of need that vacation from a vacation because I usually am always quite busy. I'm always on the road doing something, even when I'm away, whether it's work related or whether it's like me traveling. Like, and those travel trips are always like well documented, well planned out too. Exactly. So, but I usually find that like, oh my gosh, I need about a week to kind of recuperate and like get my foundation back in place and also just like get back to like quote unquote normal. I found like because I was so tired and burned out from my last trip in April, like this month, I felt like that took me about 2 weeks to get back into where I needed to be. So
I'm so glad that you're saying that because I feel so guilty when I'm like, I'm off my game for a week and I'm like, no, but like I can't function right now. Like,
And I find like the work is sloppier when you can't fully function or you're not really in the headspace. Or like, for example, when my house gets too messy and too disorganized, I can't concentrate.
Yeah.
It's like, I just need to do this. Like, I just need to clean.
Like I feel like that too. I need to strip my beds and clean all the sheets. And if I'm feeling particularly overwhelmed, then suddenly the linen closet needs to be like reorganized.
Totally.
I'm
curious too. So you're juggling, obviously, as everyone listening is very aware of, so many things and so many hats. And in kind of these almost everything except your main gig or job is gig related or a gig kind of job, a gig. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, a gig.
But with all of that going on, like what things do you think translate that from like the sex work aspect of it into non-sex work gig economy? Like, are there skill sets that are completely the same? Is there anything that stands out that's different?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of overlap and similarities, but there's also like big differences too, depending on like the work that you do in sex work. Personally, for me, there's a lot of overlap with like a lot of the admin stuff. So because I work in marketing, like I'm usually just crunching along, looking at spreadsheets a lot, and it's doing a lot of this back end stuff, which kind of translates to me, similarly speaking, to my content creation work. Like scheduling posts and like, writing the captions, even like small things like that, even updating Instagram, which I'm horrible at. Like, I just hate that platform now, but just like trying to, I'm just like, I only do stories now because they're like the least amount of work. But there's a lot of overlap with that, and like invoicing, I find follow up is really, really important to me. And also prioritization, like I mentioned, but even just like prioritizing, okay, like I need to get this stuff done for like this, like PPM I'm going to be sending out. Just a lot of like preparedness. I would find there's a lot of that kind of parallel. In terms of differences, obviously, because I'm a sex worker, I'm shooting a lot of content or like collaborating with a lot of people in different capacities. So whether that is like shooting photos or like videos and editing those kind of clips, like that to me is different than most of the vanilla work that I do. Like minus my YouTube, because I am editing and actively editing stuff there. But I find that like when it comes to dancing in particular, like that job is so physical, which would, of course, bear some kind of similarities with like my pole dancing instruction, like that, my teaching gig, because that is very physically demanding. I am having to get in there with my students to physically spot them. When I'm on stage, I am physically carrying my own body weight when I'm doing crazy pole tricks on stage. And just like, you literally get bruised up. Like literally by the end of the week, I will have bruises on my knees from crawling on the floor, picking up money. So, you know what I mean? And I mean, alongside, what's that? Sorry.
Do you like that? Because I like to work like this, and I know that a lot of other people who kind of like gravitate to this lifestyle do you like that kind of a very physical job, and then like a computer job, and then like admin work, and then like, do you like the fact that you're not always doing the same thing and that there's different like rhythms to all your jobs?
Yeah, like everything is so different. And I love the variety that happens, because as a person that gets really bored easily, and I don't know if I have like ADHD or that's like undiagnosed or something, but like I get bored really easily. So it's really nice for me to kind of stay focused and stay on top of multiple projects versus having to sit and focus and like concentrate on this one thing, because I like to have the opportunity to kind of switch things up every now and then, and just to divert my focus from something else, and then like go back and have a fresh mind and a fresh take on another project that I was maybe previously working on in, say, like the morning or something. So I think that is vital to how I operate. That doesn't mean that this is a right like model for everyone, because everyone kind of operates a bit differently, right? So, but I enjoy it for sure.
What advice would you give to people who are maybe like new coming into sex work on like how to juggle all of this stuff, or what would you tell younger people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, try to look back and like take a step back and to see like, okay, what is my main goal here? Are there any similarities in terms of like, what do I want to achieve? And I think for me, because I'm a big goal setter, I think that really helps me stay focused, and also helps me see like, certain points amongst all the craziness. So I think if you have something in mind, or have a couple different goals in mind, or like one goal that's kind of broken down into multiple goals throughout the year, throughout the quarter, throughout days, weeks, whatever, I think that will really help you stay focused and stay on track. Also, if you are managing or juggling like a few different clients or some kind of different work, it's good to set a timer sometimes. Like, this doesn't like work for everyone, but if you are trying to track time and see how much time you're spending on certain things, the stop and start function on your iPhone is really great for seeing how much time you're spending on things. But that, and also take breaks. Allow yourself to take breaks. And I know I'm really guilty of not doing this, but like, know when to like put and close the laptop or like, shut off and like give yourself that time to yourself. Like, even though I'm really, really busy, I still will find myself vegging on the couch for like at least an hour at the very, very end of my day to help me kind of get into that sleep state. So those are, I guess, my kind of helpful words of advice for anyone who's kind of starting out or like considering moving fully to like a gig economy or gig kind of work life. So hopefully that's like helpful for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you deal with like
the volatility?
Yes. Like one of the things that's nice about being in the gig economy is that like you don't have to work when you like don't want to, and you can make your own schedule. But like the thing that's not so nice is that you don't get paid unless you're like doing something, and you might not get paid at all, even when you do it. So like, how do you like emotionally manage that kind of ebb and flow?
Yeah, because that is often seen as like risky, and that's why like not a lot of people will get into this kind of work. And I'm not just talking about sex work per se, but also like acting or like if you're an artist and stuff like that. Like there's just a lot more. There can be a lot more like waiting involved for money. So I feel like to kind of stay motivated, I always try to seek out multiple or other opportunities or kind of assess the gigs that you have now and seeing if those are like, if any of those are long-term, and kind of do the calculations to see, is this enough to help me get by? If so, if I'm making this month per month, like times whatever weeks in the year, this is how much money I'm going to be making. Like, is this going to be feasible for me? And if it's not, then you're going to have to find some other options, because it is not always money every day. And it is not always big paychecks all the time. You're not going to have all those big paying clients. I feel like a lot of people, outsiders looking in, think that we're just freaking loaded all the time.
Yeah.
Like I
had
wish
a guy
I was.
yesterday tell people in my chat room I was a millionaire. I was like, no, definitely not.
No. And like, I mean, I just did my taxes here in Canada, and like, oh my God, I freaking owe like $11,000 to the CRA. Like, I want to die a little bit. No one ever talks about this kind of stuff. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Where can people find you and your work?
All your projects.
All of them.
All the projects? Okay, let me list them out. So, first and foremost, since we're on the Whorizon podcast, we can start off with my sex work. So, if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called Stripped by Sia, and that's found on all podcast platforms. You can get at me at Stripped by Sia on Twitter, on Instagram, and I also have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/Stripped by Sia. The show is all about destigmatizing sex work, and I bring different guests on every single week to kind of tackle and like just be transparent about the work that we do and to educate. That's kind of like the point of it, and just to humanize the work that we do. If you are interested in noodles of any form, primarily of the instant variety or any kind of noodle dishes or ramen hacks, you can find my YouTube channel, which is called Sia Slurps on YouTube. So you can go ahead and subscribe and maybe comment, because I love reading all that. It's fun and nerdy. I love doing that. And what else do I do?
I did subscribe to the pod, by the way.
Oh, yes. Perfect. I love it. Rate 5 stars on Spotify and like rate 5 stars on Apple if you want to. And yeah, I guess if you're in Vancouver, Canada, at any point, I tend to dance amongst a lot of the stages here for strip clubs. So come say hi, buy a dance for me. And if you're a pole dancing student, come take a class with me at Ava Fitness. And that's pretty much most of the things.
It's amazing. Awesome. And people should follow you on Twitter because you put up such good pictures of food. And I love the food porn. And that's what I'm here for. I think I got a couple of people to like follow you just for the food. I was like, you need to go, because she's eating things that look so good.
They are good. They're so good.
All right. Well, it was fun to chat with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Today's episode is sponsored by ePlay, an adult live streaming platform creating an online ecosystem for creators to engage with their fans that's easy, exciting, and empowering. At ePlay, you earn 80% of revenue on everything from live streaming to private messages with your fans to your sub-club membership fan site. ePlay even allows you to earn money while you sleep with offline tips. Do what makes you excited, take control of your business, content, voice, and freedom as a creator. Consider joining ePlay today. Shy Spells joined the sex work community in 2017. Her expertise lies in phone and camera work, and she's met so many amazing people from this line of work, which has helped her grow and blossom. Although she may not be as active as she once was, she's grateful for everything she's learned. If she's not taking calls or chatting with her fans, she's in the kitchen whipping up some floral jellies.
Welcome, Shy Spells. Welcome to On the Horizon.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you've been on Peep Show a couple of different times, and so it's fun to have you on this show too. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Shy. I've been working in the sex work industry since 2017. I mainly work with cam work and photographs and phone sex.
Nice.
Very nice.
What has been the most fun for you?
Honestly, the people I've met, other models and writers and photographers and things like that. I've met some really great friends, and that was, the best part for me.
Yeah.
We have a pretty great community on this side of the internet.
Yeah.
And so supportive.
Yeah, it really is. We just kind of talked about that in the last episode we were recording, but there was so much in my career where I was very removed from getting involved in the community. I was just really treating it, log in, do my job, get off cam, don't interact. And if I could go back, man, I would do that differently because I missed out on so much community support that I would have had,
Yeah.
That's been tough.
Yeah. So we're having you on to talk about the gig economy. And part of the reason that we wanted to do this episode is because, we're all, especially during COVID, there's been so much coverage of the gig economy and how it's emerging. And for me, as a sex worker, I'm we've always been doing this. This is nothing new to us. So the, most sex workers I know are doing this along other jobs. They're doing, sex work and driving an Uber. They're have an Etsy store and a cam site and a gaming platform. People are stringing together a whole bunch of different jobs. And I know that that's been your experience too. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I had a vanilla job when I started camming, and then as you know, my spouse had joined the military, and so I moved. And where I was, the job market was absolutely awful, and I was had all these credentials and all these certificates and stuff, and I went to school and everything, and I couldn't find a job. And cam work really helped me get the bills paid because it was something that I could just do on my own. I didn't have to worry about getting hired somewhere. I was my own boss. I made my own hours, and it was a lot easier.
Yeah. So how did you start? Where did you start?
A friend was it was a friend I had, and she was very, I thought she was very vanilla and conservative, and she was like, oh my God, guess what I did? And I was like, what did you do? And she was like, I did a cam show. And I said, you don't have to audition for those? And she was like, no, you just sign up for the site. And so she told me the site. I logged on, and the first thing I typed in was BBW because I was like, do they have fat girls on there? And I was seeing girls who looked like me, and I was like, oh my God, could I do this? Could this be a thing? And at the time, we were trying to move into our first apartment. So I was like, let me give it a go. So I got online, and I was getting all these compliments, and people were tipping me. And I was like, you know what? I think I actually like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it change? Do you think that it changed your perception of yourself or your perception of beauty or of the industry?
It definitely, it definitely changed my perception of beauty because for a long time, I seriously thought that my characteristics were just ugly, and that's just how that was, and there was no way around that, and that was just something I had to accept. Now I realize that that's how it made me look into why why society views some things as beautiful and some things as not. And I read into a lot of history, and I read a lot of things, and I realized how subjective it is, and how a lot of it is just rooted in like things like racism and or like fat phobia and things like that. And I realized that the issue wasn't me, and I was, I was beautiful.
Yeah. It sounds like that's been a good experience for you then.
I really enjoyed it.
How have you like balanced this side of your work with your like vanilla work you do? Has that been something that's been difficult to negotiate over the years?
Over the years, right now I started a new job, and then I recently took a class and stuff, so I haven't done much of sex work in the last few months. But over time, it was difficult to balance, because I am a very sleepy person. So I would put all my energy into, my vanilla work or whatnot. And then I have to come back and get on camera or the phone. And when it's, a lot of times the best hours are at night. And by that time I just wanted to go to bed. So that was definitely difficult.
That was my experience too, because people don't recognize a lot of the time how time like intensive and like energy intensive live cam is, because you have to be on and you have to be upbeat, and you have to be like kind of all of these things that are like a step or a level above your natural state, and it's very energy intensive. Like I try to explain that, because people, even friends, like I'm educating them, because like, well, you just get on cam and you get naked. I'm like, no, I don't.
No,
because if you just did that, no one stays and watches. Like you really gotta be entertaining, and that's not an easy task. I'm curious because it sounds like cam was kind of your first gig economy, I guess, experience. But then I know that you've done other things as well. You do the jam and other stuff. Can you tell us about that?
So the jelly I was making, that honestly started as I was bored and wanted to try a new recipe. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you can make jelly out of flour. So the first time I made it, I had no intention of selling it. And I was posting pictures, and a friend said, how much you selling it for? And I was like, oh, I wasn't selling it. And they were like, why not? And I was like, well, no one would buy that. And so I started looking. I had a friend help me, and she like helped me make cards and whatnot. And I started an Etsy store, and I made like 40 jars, and I sold out within like that first week.
Wow, that's so cool.
That's really neat.
Do you still have that going?
I still have the store up. I haven't made. I recently made a batch for my vanilla job, and they were like, "Oh my god, this is so good!" So I do 100% plan to get back into it. It's just hard with the move and everything, settling back in. And we moved into a much smaller place than I was originally in.
Oh, so there's less space to do it. Yeah.
But I definitely plan to get back into that.
What skills, I guess, do you see kind of crossing over from kind of your experience in sex work and being in a gig economy already into these other ventures? Do you see any things that have translated for you?
Well, I've always worked with people, and I work with the public, and sex work has 100% helped me with that. Yeah. Because I used to be incredibly sensitive to the things like people say to me, and I realized that a lot of times it has nothing that helped me with my confidence, because I realized it had nothing to do with me. If that person was upset, or if they weren't telling me what they needed, that wasn't on me, and that was on them. So now that I work with people, and especially I work with a demographic of people who may have a hard time communicating what they need, I'm able to like kind of stay zen and calm and be like, okay, this person is here for help. They want something from me. And so now I can stay calm and be like, what can I do for you? Because I remember when I first, especially the phone, oh my gosh, people would get on the phone and they're just like do the thing. And I'm like, what thing? Like, what do you want? And they're kind of like, just expect you to know.
Yeah.
So that kind of like, well, what are you into? Or, oh, what made you call me? So now when people come in and they're kind of, I need help. And it's like, okay, well, what do you need help with? And
yeah, it's so funny because I did primarily phone sex for many years. And I felt like I learned, those are the exact skills that I feel like I learned from that, is like trying to get people to actually tell you what they want, because they want something so specific, but there's a lot of shame around sexuality. So they don't want to say it. And so it's like a specific request that's not articulated, and you have to figure out like, how am I going to get you
to do it before the money runs out?
To say like what it is that you want, And I don't know, it helped me like so much to like read people too, to like read between the lines of what they were saying. Yeah. To the point that like, after I was doing it for years, like as soon as somebody would call and they would say one thing, I'd be like, okay, I know where this is going, because like things also like fall in tropes and stuff too. But it does take some time to figure out how to do that. And I agree with you. It's totally transferable to other workplaces.
Yeah. I just got into the phone sex space recently more actively, because I was doing like the texting and more of that arena, but like I've started taking calls to kind of dabble and see if I didn't give it enough of a chance, I guess, the first time. And that's kind of where I'm at. And they're calling and I'm like, okay, I'm here. Like, and like, I don't know what you expect. I don't have a script. Like, so it's funny that you guys mentioned that, because I'm literally experiencing that right now.
You just have to just push through it. I think the best thing to do is like ask as many questions as you could possibly come up with. Like, why did you call? What attracted you to like my profile? Because then you can get like, oh, well, I'm into redheads, or I like, but if you ask like, or they'll say, I was just, they'll give you hints if it has nothing to do with that, so then you can see like, where are people and what do they want?
Good advice. For everyone listening who's a sex worker, this is, helpful. Yeah. Did you find that there was any overlap in terms of like marketing? Because that's where I feel strongest. That sex work has really helped me with launching other businesses, like how to self-market and navigate.
Well, so when I wanted to get into the jelly, the first thing I did, I posted it on my Twitter, and so many other sex workers were like, yeah, I'd buy that. And honestly, they were my number one customers. Yeah. So, so yeah, actually I had a phone client buy my jelly, and they gave it to his mom, and his mom loved it, and so then she bought my jelly.
That's so cute.
That's really cool.
I really like that one. That made me feel special.
Yeah.
It's funny how it translates like that. That's great.
Yeah. So like, what do you think that the challenges are of like holding multiple gigs at the same time?
I'm glad you asked, because I really wanted to bring up, I feel a lot of times when people look at like gigs, they hear like the best of the best stories. Yeah. And I feel like it's also important to talk about the people who just have enough to pay a bill, have enough to pay rent. Or sometimes there's times where you don't make any money at all. And that's a really big thing I noticed with sex work, is that, when I first got in this, I thought I was just going to show up and people were just going to throw wads of money at me. And I learned that that's not the case. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It's just how gig economy works. You got to constantly figure out what works for you. And so, or sometimes gig economy isn't for everyone, and that's totally fine too. I love, I have a job now where I work regular, 9 to 5. And, I like that I still have time to do other things, but I know that my primary income comes from the vanilla work, and that's okay. But I feel like one of the biggest things is staying consistent. And I know a lot of times people get into gig economy because they might have like mental health issues or something that keeps them from constantly being on the go. So they're like, okay, I can take time because I don't have a boss who's going to fire me if I need a week to take off. Yeah. So, but the big part is, especially when you're starting off, you kind of have to push through. You have to push through those times where you don't feel like working because you're new. You're a new face. You got to get the attention. You got to, like, why should we buy from you? Because there's when I, looked up jelly on Etsy, there were a bunch of other jelly sellers who were selling at lower prices than mine, or, had better quality, had their own farms and things like that. So you got to figure out, what are you going to do to bring people in that makes you special, to stand out?
I'm so glad we're going into this direction with the conversation, because I have a friend who I adore, and I hope she listens to our podcast. Probably not, but maybe she will now. But
now that you've shouted her out,
I'm secretly talking about her. But she's just venturing into adult, and she is in a situation where she can't be open about what she's doing yet, which a lot of listeners, I'm sure, are in that situation as well. And she's really struggling with this balance, because I'm giving her advice as someone who's a veteran, who's experienced, and also is in a place where I don't have to worry about a mainstream job or a 9 to 5 coming down on me. And when I say things like, you have to be consistent and really go hard on the first of the month in a cam space or a phone sex space or Sex Panther, because you get the advantage of added traffic and all these strategies, but she was doing really, really well, and then it fell off for her. And she messaged me about this, and she's like, this is really taking a toll on my mental health. I feel like I'm getting an ulcer, and she's going through, and it's so personal to me, because I'm I remember, I get there. It still happens. It's still hard. And I don't want to give her advice like that. It's still hard 10 years later, because I'm sure that's not what she wants to hear. But this is really the ebb and flow of what a gig economy looks like. And it is not easy all the time. And there's days I'll log onto cam for 8 hours, not anymore 8 hours, I'm shorter now, but I would spend 8 hours on cam and make $3. And there's days I'd log on cam for an hour and make $1,000. And you don't get to pick when they are. And I often find the days I give up, or if I'm I thought about giving up and I stayed on an hour longer, I crush it in that last hour. And then the days I would have quit, I'm well, it could have been this hour after I quit and I would have been fine. And you just don't get that sense of peace of mind in this area. And that's what you're trading, the instability, for the high risk, high reward factor.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It's not easy, and it's not all pretty. And and I feel guilty of that too, because I feel on Sex Work CEO, I make things look, if you just follow the formula, it could turn out this way, because that was the formula I played by. But you have to be conscious too now, there's disabled sex workers listening where being consistent isn't possible for them. And that advice won't apply to everyone. So it's so enlightening to be cognizant of those things. But also on the flip side, if you have the privilege of being in a position where you can get up and do the work, you really got to fucking do the work, because that's your only advantage, is that you can.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I used to get into really bad depressive episodes when I wasn't making money, and I would sit there, and then I, start internalizing that. Well, it's because you're fat, and it's because you're this ethnicity, and it's because you're this, and because you're that. But then I would see other women who had those attributes, other models who had those attributes, and I'd be like, okay, so then, well, what's wrong with me? And it's really, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just, you got to stick with it.
Yeah.
I kind of do this PJ makes fun of me because I'll have the best month ever, and then it'll be the first, and I won't have anything booked on my calendar. And I'll be this month we're going to start. And they'll be you said this last month and it was fine. And I'll be oh, but I panic when there's when I don't know what's coming next, or I have a client take off, or something happens where I feel my income streams are gonna dry up. I'll start to panic, and it might be bad for a couple weeks, and then then I'll have an entire week full of appointments that so I think that two things I want to say about that, and I'm curious what you think about this, Shai, because I feel that's pretty common, that experience of being
panic.
I'm going to fail out of this because right now things are bad. And it's when things are good, you think it's a fluke. And when things are bad, you think it's the pattern, where that doesn't make sense. But, and I also think that one of the things that we should be aware of on social media, and I think a lot of new people aren't aware of that, is that so much of sex work Twitter is marketing, and people aren't doing, a lot of people aren't doing as well as it seems like they're doing. Yeah. I was wondering how you dealt with that, or what you thought about that.
I'll be honest, I didn't deal with that well. That was really difficult for me, especially seeing very conventionally attractive people talking about how they're just making out the wazoo, just so much money. And or the ones who would like put other workers down, like, oh, like you bitches are slacking, I'm making money, y'all, that's why y'all poor and stuff. Cause I'd be like, well, that's me, and I'm not slacking, I'm getting on every night. And so, but to know, you saying that now, to know that, you know, it's all, not everything that glitter is gold. It's, you know, it's part of the marketing strategy. You know, that was something that, you know, I was like, okay, well, you know, and then I learned to kind of be happy from like, hey, if you are making the money, good for you. Hopefully some of that, you know, good luck will come down to me. So, or I would go look on their page and see like, well, what is this model doing that she's, you know, getting so much, you know, more, you know, and I looked through and look, you know, and I would also like, I would ask questions. Like if I saw someone who like, they had less followers than me, and it seemed like in a month they had like double my followers. So I paid them, and I joined their like OnlyFans, and I sent them a message, and I said, hey, can I tip you from advice? How did you were behind, what happened? And a lot of them were more than happy to be like, oh yeah, so this is what I did. This is what I did. And hopefully this worked for you too.
That's amazing. You know, and that's very evolutionary of our space, because in the beginning, when I was especially in cam, that was not the experience. Like if I reached out to help, or because I was really big on like watching other cam girls and like watching their social and replicating what seemed to be working, because that's how you learn. Like if that's how you do it, I guess that's how you do it.
Yeah,
like,
in other jobs you're trained how to do the job. So like that's on the job training.
Exactly. So like, but in the beginning, like it was much more gatekeeping, I felt, than it is now. Like if you're, especially when you can go and tip for someone's time, like, hey, I respect your time. Here's, you know, $50. Could you just point me in the right direction? Like, how did you grow this? Or how, you know, but it's so nice to hear that was an experience, because it didn't used to feel like that, you know?
When I first got in, it definitely did not feel like that. I kind of lucked out, because I found out that I just happened to know someone and join a group, and found another model that lived in my city, and we had lunch together. And then from there, like I met some other people through them, and I was like, oh, okay, like that, you know, and that helped me a lot. But yeah, when I first joined, like it was very like, oh, you're new, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. But I got too, like even asking like, well, what kind of webcam do you use? Like, cause your extreme looks amazing. Like you'll figure it out. No one helped me. And I was like, well, so can't you help me? Like what? But yeah, it's gotten a lot better for sure.
Where can people find you and your work?
Yes.
Twitter, Shy Spells. That's where I mostly communicate now. That's the Jelly Babe for Etsy. That's so where my store is. But I still have my Twitter up. My inbox is open for questions or anything. I'm always there. I don't think I'll ever leave the Twitter, even with you know who buying it.
I know. Yeah, somebody asked me that the other day. They're like, "Are you leaving?" I'm like, "They're gonna have to kick me off this platform. No. I'm not walking.
We don't
off.
Leave
I've made way too many good connections through Twitter to let him run me off.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was really fun to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me here. This has been a lovely experience as always.
This episode of On the Horizon is sponsored by DMCA Force. DMCA Force is the authorized DMCA agent for the largest online creators and the platforms that they monetize. DMCA Force protects models, musicians, writers, videographers, artists, and tons of other creatives publishing their works online. With DMCA Force, you get 24/7 automated monitoring, flagging, and removal of stolen and pirated content. They use metadata and keywords relating to your work in collaboration with search engines to remove even the 10 to 15% of content on ghost sites that can't typically be scrubbed from the internet. They even offer the ability to fingerprint content and digitally watermark it as an added layer of security to protect the art you work so hard creating. Join DMCA Force today. Thank you for joining us for another episode of On the Horizon, a podcast about what's on the horizon for sex workers and how to navigate it.
I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual and at jessiesage.com.
And I'm Melrose Michaels, and you can find me at Melrose Michaels on social and melrosemichaels.com.
Just a reminder, if you are enjoying the podcast on Apple, please leave us a 5-star rating and review because it really helps us to grow as a podcast and better share information from our guests to the sex work community as a whole.
Last but not least, if you want to support the podcast, please go to anchor.fm/Whorizon, spelled Whorizon, to become a premium subscriber of On the Horizon, which unlocks 2 bonus episodes on the 8th and 22nd of each month with tons of extra exclusive footage from ourselves and our guests.